It's very clear from the historical record, two things. One, everybody thought that there were going to be long-term benefits from our relationship with China, and everybody thought that Taiwan was probably going to disappear of its own accord.
这些错误是在3个公报里头。那什么样错误？第一个是说美国认为会跟中国有长期的关系；第二个是说台湾很快就会被中国吸纳成为中国的一部分。
These assumptions were totally wrong, so it's a great thing that they were corrected by the Taiwan Relations Act.
那各位都知道这2个前提假设都是错误的，所以很重要就是台湾关系法要来纠正这样的错误。
There are many assumptions that were made about China and Taiwan that have proven to be wrong, and more we see, particularly in the last couple of years, more and more Americans recognize the fact. First of all, the Kissingerian Nixon strategic argument that this would divide Russia or the Soviet Union and China, that proved to be in the long run totally wrong.
那么什么样的错误呢？第一个是说基辛格跟尼克森想的战略，认为说可以联中制俄，那么这个证明是错误的。
And Kissinger assumed we were going to make progress on a range of regional, bilateral, international issues, but in fact, over the years, cooperation has been almost nil on any important matters.
美中关系正常化，本来他们也想说去处理一些双边的议题，比如说越南、北韩，还有伊朗等等。后来也发现这些议题其实没有那么重要。
The liberalization argument, that is, if we opened up trade with China, that China would become the modernization theory, that Taiwan would become more democratic, that also proved to be totally untrue, particularly with the arrival of Xi Jinping.
那么另外一个想法就是说，美中交往之后，中国会变成比较自由化、比较民主化，follow 那个台湾的这个路径。结果现在证明是错误，特别是习近平上来之后。
But Clinton liked to use it, I know, because I was in the State Department at the time, because nobody wants to say, oh, we want trade because big business wants to do business there. But in fact, a lot of businesses didn't succeed, and not everybody succeeded equally. For example, as many as 3 million Americans lost employment as a result of our relationship with China.
另外一个想法是说，美中关系正常化之后，美国的企业可以得利，但是后来发现，美国企业在中国不是所有都是成功，那成功也只是少数。那么而且因为这样子，美国自己内部有300万多人失业。
The U.S. also, we greatly underestimated the weaknesses within China, but also we greatly underestimated its future belligerence.
另外就是美国低估了中国的在经济上、政治上所遇到的困难，特别是中国跟美国敌对的这种可能性。
In fact, all 3 communiques, in retrospect, are very much, I think the right word, for relics. They're sort of the ruins of the Cold War that still exist. Blumenthal and Shriver, who are 2 strong supporters of Taiwan, they wrote an article where they said it is hard to think of another set of relationships still governed by joint communiques from the Cold War. That's what these are. They're relics of the Cold War.
美中3公报从我们现在回顾起来，可以认为是冷战的遗迹。那么这2位作者在那个国家利益的这个杂志上写说，现在很难想象还有一个主要的关系是由3个公报来管制的。
Well, I'm not going to read the Shanghai Communique. Rather, I'm just going to, in the next slide, talk about what's wrong with it. The biggest thing that surprised me when I came to AIT and I began reading the communiques and just look at it objectively, what do they say? I realized that the central statement in the Shanghai Communique has no factual basis.
那么第一个公报就是1972年的上海公报，那它的弱点是它没有事实上的基础。
Because the communique is premised on the argument that all Chinese on either side of the Taiwan Strait maintain there is but one China and that Taiwan is a part of China.
因为它中间主张说，两岸的中国人都认为只有一个中国，而台湾是中国的一部分。
Now that was true certainly for Mao. It was certainly true for Chiang Kai-shek. But nobody asked during the Cultural Revolution the people of Taiwan, the people of China, what do you think? And nobody asked the Taiwanese people.
这个也许对于毛泽东或蒋介石是正确，但是没有人问问台湾人民的意见，或是中国人民的意见。
But of course, it came about because nobody wanted to refer to the Taiwan government.
但是他是这样子写，是因为他不想要提到台湾政府。
The second communique is very flawed because it never meant the same thing for either side. It's a little bit like the 92 consensus. You can't have a consensus if one side says it means one China and the other side says it means one China, different interpretations.
第二个公报1979年的这个公报呢，它的问题是它其实没有双方的这个同意。比如说像9·2共识也是一样，它不可能对一方来说是一中原则，另外一个是一中各表。
But the United States tried to fuzz the issue by acknowledging the Chinese position that there's one China and Taiwan is part of China.
那么它的语句是说，美国政府认知中国的立场是只有一个中国，而台湾是中国的一部分。
But this so-called one China policy was never, as China always implies, China's one China principle. Because when you say acknowledge things, I always give the example, I may acknowledge that you think I'm crazy, but that doesn't mean I agree with you.
那么什么叫做认知呢？可能举个例子说，我认知你认为我是疯子，但是不表示我同意你说我是疯子。
So Washington intentionally didn't use the word recognize as intentionally as China had wished. But the Chinese version of the text, they use it. They say chengren, which we never use, because one of the mistakes, which is a fundamental divide, is they said the Chinese version would be okay for China, and the English version would be okay for the United States, but they're not the same.
所以说在英文上他写说认知，就是说我知道了，但中文他就用承认，但是英文上从来没有用过承认，所以对于英文来说，美国说 OK， 中文说我也认为是 OK， 所以但是他们两个不一样。
One of the things that the TRA also did, besides emphasizing human rights, emphasizing peaceful means, many people don't realize how important it was that it set up AIT. Because originally, the White House had no plans. Even though there were thousands of Americans living here, there was an American school, there was a huge amount of commerce and trade already. How are we going to conduct relations? It was like it didn't matter as long as we had our communiques. So they established AIT. Very important. This is what the new $256 million AIT looks like.
那么另外一个现在不受强调的是，台湾关系法建立了美国在台协会。那么这个是现在的新的这个馆，它非常的昂贵的造价。那这是说当时我们没有想到说还好，因为美国跟台湾关系非常的密切，包括外侨，包括学校。那么要如何来维持跟台湾的关系，需要一个机制，那就是 AIT。
So if the first two communiques are flawed, the third communique is just totally wrong. Because we've never abided by it anyway, because it said we would gradually reduce arms, but we never did. So it was just erroneous.
那么如果说前两个美中公报都是有缺陷，第三个公报根本就是完全错误，因为他说他要尽量减少，逐年减少对台湾的军备的提供，其实根本从来没有实行过。
And in fact, the 6 assurances where President Reagan was unhappy about the third communique, it was one of the reasons that Al Haig was fired as Secretary of State, and that's why he, with Taiwanese encouraged him, he agreed to the 6 assurances.
其实为了要让他第三个公报不会那么错误，那个美国雷根总统把他原来去海格的这个国务卿给 fire 掉，然后去做了6项保证来证明说美国对台湾还是有安全的保证。
Now the irony is that when Al Haig left the State Department, when he was fired by President Reagan, he joined United Technologies, and at that time he was trying to sell Sikorsky helicopters both to Taiwan and to China.
那么海格被这个从国务卿移开以后，他到了科技公司，分别对中国以及对台湾卖武器。
Okay, and then the 6 assurances reinforce this view that we want to be helpful to Taiwan and we're not going to negotiate Taiwan's future with China.
6项保证中间，各位可以看内容，基本上就是美国会说他会认真的执行跟台湾的关系，并且说不会出卖台湾。
So the big question now is, what does the U.S. do now at this time in history with this kind of very flawed historical diplomatic history behind us?
如果说在历史上外交上有这些错误的话，现在问题就是说美国现在可以怎么做？
In the previous cartoon, it said by honoring the one China policy, we can move towards our real priorities, and of course, South China Sea, trade, North Korea, currency manipulation, none of those things have been solved.
所以说，你看，好像说我们在一中原则有一个共识之后，我们其他问题都可以解决。但是各位看南海，或是贸易的问题，或是北韩的问题，或是这个货币贬值的问题，其实都没有办法解决。
So you say one China policy and it doesn't solve anything, and the problem is we don't know if that's what President Trump thinks.
那现在说一中政策其实没有解决任何问题，因为我们不太知道美国川普总统在想什么。
Now, early on, there were, not as soon as it should have been, but as early as 2002, Congress began to act to say we have to do things to change the nature of the relationship. And a big decision, this is the Congressional Act, it was in the Foreign Relations Authorization Act, which said active diplomats and active military officers, although it didn't say military, but when you say the head of any other department or agency may detail an employee to AIT, that began to happen earlier for the State Department after 2002, but it didn't happen until 2005 for the Pentagon.
那其实美国近年来逐渐在改变过去的政策，比如说2002年的这个外交授权法，先是对国务院，然后后来是对2005年开始对于这个国防部说可以派现任的官员来处理台美的关系。
And my own contribution to starting to, make Taiwan more recognizably an American government institution was to change the old AIT sign, which is in the middle, which I think Doug Paul did, great fan of the Kuomintang, and I put the American flag back in. And I also, for the first time, I flew the American flag over AIT.
所以那个司徒文大使在 AIT 任主任的时候，他把中间原来这个 AIT 的这个标志改成上面的，那就放了美国的国旗在上面，并且在 AIT 的馆上升了美国的国旗。
The other thing is you should recognize is one thing Taiwan should do. That was a step in the right direction. But there are still many self-imposed restrictions Washington lawyers thought up to prove that we're really halting diplomatic relations with China, which of course we didn't really do. We just called them unofficial.
另外一个是美国自己加注在自己身上的限制。
So you see, we used to get do's and don'ts. I don't know if they still do, but when I came out, say Taiwan, but don't use the Republic of China, which is kind of contradictory in a way. I wonder if Ma Ying-jeou knew that. And don't use economy, island, area, or jurisdiction, but don't refer to it as a country. Well, that's stupid. Because if you're speaking English and you're referring to Taiwan, it's just abnormal. Not at some point, you're not going to refer to it as an area. You're going to say, well, in this country. So that's what I used to do, and nobody ever really noticed, I guess. They weren't, by that time, they weren't as restrictive about it. But I don't know, what we'll see in a few minutes. More recent legislation says we have to review the guidelines for how you behave in Taiwan. Congress wants us to do that in accordance with the fact that Taiwan is a friend, it's a partner, it's a democracy, and we have to give it respect.
那么各位现在看到，就是他给外交人员的有说可以做什么，不可以做什么，可以叫台湾，不能叫ROC， 把台湾可以叫一个岛或是一个地区，但是不能叫台湾是一个国家。
In fact, once I heard of an ambassador to APEC come and have a meeting with the Taiwanese president, and he kept on saying, well, as an important economic entity, he never once used Taiwan or country. He constantly called it an economic entity. That sounds stupid.
所以在那个 APEC 的场合，他们都叫台湾是一个经济实体，但从来不叫台湾是一个国家，这实在是很愚蠢的事情。
There are a lot of other reference measures that the U.S. could unilaterally adopt. So one would be, in my view, to improve the relationship, is the U.S. should never, and particularly if it's a State Department spokesperson who knows nothing about Taiwan, should never ever refer to one China in any way. Because it's confusing, it's imprecise, it's inaccurate, it's misleading. So you shouldn't say, well, in accordance with our one China policy. No, don't say that.
另外一个是美国自己可以单方去改进的，比如说不要在外交的场合再提到所谓一中政策，因为它非常的令人混淆。
We should also stop referring to the three communiques as if they're, it's the Bible, and we're referencing something that's holy. As I pointed out, one's factually incorrect, one was effectively repudiated, and it was never observed in any case. So stop it. China can refer to it, okay? We should refer, as we're doing more and more in Congresses, to the Taiwan Relations Act and the 6 assurances.
另外一个美国可以做的是，不要把3个公报当成圣经一样，一直的去提它，因为我们刚刚你讲它有许多的缺陷，中国可以提它，但是美国可以不要。我们可以更多的提到台湾关系法以及6项保证。
The other thing is Clinton was the one who changed during his visit. I was in Beijing at the time in '98. He changed declared the policy. He just declared it that the U.S. would not support the admission of Taiwan into any international organization for which statehood is a requirement. Now that contravenes the Taiwan Relations Act, which is law. It's not a presidential statement, it is law, because that says nothing in this act may be construed as a basis for excluding or expelling Taiwan from continued membership in any or international organization. So we should have never accepted it, and we should have fought harder.
另外一项错误是，比如说克林顿总统在98年去中国访问的时候说不支持台湾加入以国家资格为要件的国际组织。其实这一件事情跟台湾关系法是相反的，是抵触。
The other thing I would recommend is that we should have high-level exchanges. It's been said innumerable times now in various congressional resolutions, but I don't think we should advertise it, and it should always be at the discretion of Taiwan to decide, because it bears the greatest risk if there's a reaction from China. But I think we don't necessarily have to advertise everything we do. Send a high-level person, don't talk about it. The main thing is to have higher-level contact, both in Washington and here, so we could be more discreet about it. The same thing, we shouldn't announce ourselves to Taiwan, just do it. We don't have to tell anybody.
这些紧密的台美合作，有些是可以做，但是不用事事都要公布，或是说，比如说更多的武器的贩卖，或是更多的高层的往来，其实就做，不要说就可以了。
I mean, China doesn't tell us when it's going to send missile or nuclear technology to China. Remind, as I've already indicated, the PRC of its own words, particularly if you look at the 72 communique. I mean, it's like wherever there's oppression, there's resistance. Countries want independence. Nations want liberation. Okay, all nations, big or small, should be equal. Big nations should not bully the small, and strong nations should not bully the weak. China will never be a superpower, and it opposes hegemony and power politics of any kind. We should repeat this ad nauseum to the Chinese every time they do anything that puts pressure on Taiwan. These are their own words. You're bullying somebody. Don't do it.
另外可以做的是，我们可以提醒中国自己讲的话。在72年的时候，他说中国绝对不会成为超级强权，不会做霸权，不会大欺小。那每次中国要霸凌台湾的时候，就提醒他说：“你不是说你不会大欺小吗？”
The U.S. congressional support and at the administrative level for Taiwan now is very strong. But frankly, we don't know at the very top level what will happen. The overall direction since 2016 toward Taiwan has been really positive. resolutions in May of 2016, December of 2016, April of 2018 report that we'd granted a submarine technology license. The fact that later there was a report that we'd signed an agreement to share scientific research. And then finally the Taiwan Travel Act. All of these things were very positive.
现在台美关系整个总览是行政部门及国会对于台湾支持都非常强，我们只是不太知道总统他在想什么。
We don't have to go through the Taiwan Travel Act except I'll point out that it refers to Taiwan as a beacon of democracy, and it says this, in effect, if you're going to have relations with a country, you need to treat them in the following manner. So indirectly, it's the first time I've ever seen a statement referring to Taiwan as a country.
那实际上我们要特别提出，台湾旅行法中间有说台湾是一个民主灯塔的国家，那是在美国官方文书上第一次非常隐晦的称台湾为一个国家。
One interesting thing, though, is in all of these pieces of legislation, there's no reference to One China and there's no reference to the three communiques. It's always the Taiwan Relations Act and the Six Assurances.
这些近年的立法都没有再提到三公报，提到的是台湾关系法以及6项保证。
And then recently, in January, there hasn't been any follow-up action, but Senator Gardner introduced legislation. Basically, if a country lowers its level of relations with Taiwan or breaks diplomatic relations, the U.S. should do the same thing, put the same pressure on those countries as a disincentive. In other words, do unto others as they would do unto Taiwan.
今年1月的时候，Gardner 参议员有提台北法，说如果有其他国家降低跟台湾的外交关系的话，美国应该降低跟那个国家的外交关系。
One of the most interesting ones, though, is the Taiwan Assurance Act to strengthen ties. It's moved forward a little bit. I think it's now been submitted to the Senate, the full Senate, and the full House, but urges Taiwan to increase its defense spending. It doesn't help Taiwan that its defense spending is still at about the 2% level. But second of all, it again calls on calls for the first time, I think, for joint military exercises, and it calls for the chief of the Liaison Affairs Office at AIT, effectively the defense attaché, should be a flag or a general officer, in other words, an admiral or a general. And finally, calls on the U.S. Trade Representative to resume meetings to get a free trade agreement.
另外就是最近提出来的台湾保证法，中间有几点值得注意。第一个是说，希望台湾加强自己的国防支出，而不是只限于2%的国防预算。另外就是说，台美之间的联合军演，以及说 AIT 的武官可以有将官级或是海军将官级的武官，并且台美应该要赶快尽速加强他们双边贸易协定、自由贸易协定的这个协商。
And because the Congress doesn't trust the White House, they say within 6 months of enactment, we want to see the new guidelines. Show us the proof.
所以基本上就是说，美国总统你要通过6个月之后，要交给国会说你怎么样改了现在的实践。
So I conclude it's clear to me the U.S. is becoming far more realistic about what China is and what threats it represents. We're far more understanding of Taiwan's importance, both strategically but also as a symbol of democracy in the world. And we're far more frank, I think, now about U.S. interests and strategic interests and also U.S. principles.
所以我们整个回顾就是说，美国对于中国的本质以及中国带来的威胁有更清楚的认识，并且对于台湾的价值，不是只有战略价值，还有台湾作为民主的一个价值，有更清楚的认识，并且对于美国在台美中间的利益有什么，有更清楚的认识。
I don't envision it happening, but I would like to see a clear statement from the United States that until and unless China becomes a free and democratic country where rule of law and respect for human rights are fundamental principles, we don't support unification. And also the other condition, the Taiwan people have to want unification.
说美国甚至可以说，除非中国变成一个民主、法治、尊重人权的国家，然后再来考虑统一问题，或者是还有说，台湾人民必须能接受统一，才有统一的问题。
You know, until that day comes, I know 40% of Taiwan's exports go to China or to China through Hong Kong. But I don't think China has that much to offer Taiwan other than, you know, those people who are doing business and trade. That's important, but that's why I'd like to see Taiwan have a free trade agreement with the U.S. and with other countries, particularly with Japan. Meanwhile, we should state that a secure and democratic Taiwan is just as critical as peaceful cross-strait relations for a stable and secure Asia.
我知道台湾跟中国好像有很紧密的贸易联系，可是我们希望说台湾跟美国以及日本有更深的贸易的连接，并且我们应该要说，一个安全的民主的台湾是对于台湾海峡的情势以及整个亚洲的情势是一个基础的基石。
Thank you.